Welcome to Gleaning and Gathering. I'm your host, Eric Heinlich, and today I'm back here at my desk behind the old microphone to talk again about what I'm gleaning. This week, learning to put things in a box. You know, we have things that we say yes to, and there is the desire to do the very best that we can at something. But if you're like me, you have more than one thing going on in your life, and so you can only do so much. So there's the ideal, there's the perfect, that's pretty much unattainable, but if you had enough time, you could maybe get pretty close to it. And then there's the reality of how much time you actually have. And so one of the things that I have learned over the years is to put it in a box. Someone said that work expands to the time allotted to it, and it's true. No matter how much you have to do, if you will define the box ahead of time and say, this is how much time I have to commit to this, and I'm going to do the very best that I can inside of these parameters, and then go to work on it, you will help yourself, because at the end of the day, you only have so much time. And so learning to put things in a box and say, this is how big of a box I am going to allot for this is really important on the front end. Because when you get into something and you're really passionate about it, the tendency is to have that expand beyond the place that it's really proper and reasonable. This past week, I had the opportunity to be able to share at the Men Arise conference. And I had been working on my presentation for some time, but toward the end, there was that period where I'm really intensely trying to make sure that I've got it ready to go. And so when I shared my first draft in practice, so I did this in a practice way, I had 15 minutes of content, and it was horrible. It went terribly. And so I realized, okay, I've got to go back to the drawing board. I've got to add more illustrations. I've got to try to beef this up and develop it further. And so I did. And I allotted some time to that. And so after I finished reworking and then practiced again and then reworked it again, I had come to the end of my allotted time. And I really needed another week to be able to get it to where I wanted it. But I didn't have another week. And so I drew a line and went with the presentation that I had, and God helped me. I'm thankful for how he did help me. And I was sufficiently prepared, even though as I stood there in front of these 500 plus men in this beautiful amphitheater in Seymour, Indiana, I thought to myself, what in the world have I done? And was so nervous and all those things. But at the same time, I knew that I had prepared, but I also knew that I was not at the point of perfection. There are things that I would have loved to have done if I had the time. I didn't. And so I did it inside the box that I had allotted to myself to make time for the other things in my life that were also important and needed to be done simultaneously, or at least concurrently, I guess is the right word. So that's an example of what I'm talking about. You probably have examples in your own life, things that you're working on right now, that you need to put in a box. You need to define how much time do I actually have to commit to this, and then work on it. Go to work, use that time as completely as you can, but at the end of that period, shut the box and move on. I think I read about Teddy Roosevelt. I'm pretty sure it was him, that he operated this way in his college days and probably throughout the rest of his life. And so he allotted so much time to his studies. He allotted so much time to spending time with friends, and he allotted so much time to other activities in his life. And so when he would finish the time that he had allotted for his studies, he shut his books and walked away. And as a result, he didn't have real high grades. But he had a life. And I think there's great wisdom there. Looking back on my life in my academic years when I was in college, I spent entirely too much time on my studies. I remember one break in particular, I think it was Thanksgiving break. I spent the entire break writing a 13-page paper for systematic theology. And I did a great job. I wasted my Thanksgiving break. I was not present with my family. I was not present in the way that I should have been for the things that were happening that were truly memorable. And I wrote a great paper, but I don't even know where that paper is today. I couldn't tell you any of the points in the paper. I do remember the title, but I don't remember any of the points of the paper. And really, in the grand scheme of things, looking back 20 plus years later, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I had spent less time on my studies, and I wish I had spent more time with mentors. I wish I'd spent more time with friends, and I wish I had spent more time with family. It's not that my studies were completely unimportant, but at that time, I was compelled primarily out of a sense of competition that I was going to, keep that perfect GPA. My GPA today isn't anything that I prize. There's in no way any part of my life that is better because I had the GPA that I did than if I wouldn't have. And yet there are things that I look back, I wish I would have had more conversations, sitting and talking with Larry Greil and with Michael Williams and with President England and with the friends that I had at that time. That would have been time well spent. I didn't know that principle at that point in my life, but I wish I would have. Put it in a box. Define how much time I'm going to spend on this and then go to work. But when that time has come to an end, close the box. And so I want to encourage you, whatever you're working on, don't let it consume your life. Your life is not your work. It includes far more than that. It includes work, but put it in a box and then work inside of that parameter. It goes along a little bit with what I shared at Men Arise. I was talking to them about saying the holy no so that you can say yes to God, and describing kind of some of my early life and the mistakes that I made in this area. And every time the phone rang, just assuming it was God and going to this place, that place, the other place, and doing all kinds of stuff, but not really focused anywhere. And then the ways in which today, in our decision-making process about how we spend our time, many people's thought process goes something like this. I want to do this. I think that people might like me better if I do it. And I think God would be okay with me doing it. There are lots of things that are in our schedules that we think we have to do. But one of the points that I made is that if you didn't do it, the sun would keep rising, the world would keep going. And the truth is, no one has to do anything. Some people must say, well, I have to go to work. No, you don't. There are people today waking up under a bridge that are not going to work. They've made choices that have placed them where they're at, but they're not headed to work today. We choose to do what we do. The uncomfortable truth is that we have 100% control of our schedule. And we may want to think that, I have to do this, or this person's expecting me to do that. But you have 168 hours in your week, and you have 24 hours in your day, and you determine how they are spent. You choose. And while you can do anything you want, you can't do everything you want. Every yes is also a no. And when you say yes to something, you're automatically saying no to something else. And so the question is, how intentional are you being with how you're saying that yes? In other words, what did you just say no to in order to do what you're doing right now? Stephen Covey reminds us that we need to begin with the end in mind. A while back, I shared with the gathering my list of if I knew I only had 6 months to live, what would I do? Psalms chapter 90, verse 12 says, "So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom." David, when he was going through a difficult time in Psalms 39, he says, "Lord, make me to know mine end, and the measure of my days, what it is, that I may know how frail I am. Behold, thou hast made my days as a handbreadth. My age is as nothing before thee. Verily, every man at his best state is altogether vanity." And so if you only had 6 months to live, what would you do? Or maybe more importantly, what would you stop doing? And so I made my list, and I shared a little bit of that with the men at the conference. I would finish my will, the one that's laying on my desk unsigned and unfinished, and I would make sure that my affairs were in order financially. I would delegate my jobs and the things that I'm doing that continue to need to be done. I would go to the beach. I would watch more sunrises. I would have my devotions each morning and delight deeply in God. I would passionately date my wife and treasure every moment that I had with her. I would record and write messages for my children to remember important truths that I want to pass on to them. I would eliminate social media from my life and delete Facebook from my phone. I would stay off my phone except to talk with friends or family. I would enjoy eating good food. I would throw parties for my friends and talk long into the night, squeezing each gathering for every life-giving moment. I would have long talks with Rochelle and each of my children. I would listen to beautiful music. I would look for things to be grateful for and call them out. I would smile at everyone I met. I would focus my time on my local community of faith and family, staying here at Victory Acres. I would plan my celebration of life service to include all the things that are important to me. I would take time for prayer and soul searching. I would say heartfelt goodbyes to my loved ones. And when my time would come, I would commit my soul to my faithful Father. I don't know how much time I have left. But whether it's 45 years or 6 months, these are some of the things that I should be doing anyway. And knowing that our time is limited helps us to focus on what's really important. Friends, it may be an uncomfortable truth, but your days are numbered. Your time is limited. And so in light of that, how are you spending it? How intentional are you being with the yes that you're saying? I was talking with the pastor on a plane a few years back, and she mentioned that they're one of the largest purchasers of marbles in the country. Every new parent at North Point gets a large jar with 936 marbles. One marble represents a week in the life of that child from birth to 18 years of age. And they're encouraged that every week they're to take a marble out of that jar as a visible reminder of how much time they have left. And I want to say, as a father of a 23-year-old, I can tell you that the days are long, but the years are short. If you are in that season right now, treasure the time that you have with your children. Keep your eye on the ball. It's going to pass very quickly. And the work that you're doing in this season is incredibly important. Just as Jesus lived in relaxed, loving union with the Father, he invites us to share in that same relationship with him. He says, "I am the vine, ye are the branches. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. For without me, ye can do nothing." John 15:5. And so I want to encourage you that the work that you do should flow out of this deep, contented relationship with God. As you spend time with Him in prayer, where is He guiding your mind and your heart? Where is He wanting you to focus? See, with that as our primary identity, our approach as a dearly loved child of God should be on, what does He want me to do? And so the phrase that I had the men say at the conference was, I will say the holy no so that I can say yes to God. One of my friends, his wife, for Christmas one year, asked him for the gift of 1,000 no's. It works out to about 3 a day. But would he say over the next year, no to 1,000 things? I think that's a really great principle. Learning to say a holy no. The psalmist understood this. He says in Psalms 27 verse 4, this one thing have I desired of the Lord. Not these 47 things, this one thing. That will I seek after. What is it? That I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, and behold the beauty of the Lord, and to inquire in His temple. I want to be in His presence. That's what I want. That is the one thing. And so, friends, I want to ask you, what are you doing with the only life you'll ever have? Are you being intentional with how you're stewarding the limited time that you will have on this earth? And are you living life as a dearly loved child of God? Are you orienting your life and your schedule so that, like Jesus, every action you take is rooted in a place of deep rest and contentment in your loving relationship with God as Father? That's the question. And so whatever you're working on right now, I just want to encourage you to put it in a box. I want to encourage you to say the holy no so that you can say yes to God. And then whatever He's giving you to do, whatever activities that you're working on right now, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with might. But friends, do it out of the identity that you are loved by God, that you're His child, and as His dearly beloved child. Out of that place of deep rest and contentment, you are doing the work that He has given you to do. As Jesus finished His life in ministry, He says in John 17, verse 4, I have glorified Thee on the earth. I have finished the work which Thou gavest me to do. When it comes to the end of your life, will you be able to say the same thing? Jesus lived to do the will of the Father. That was His single-minded devotion. And I want to challenge you to make it yours as well. For Gleaning and Gathering, God bless.